Not only do I not know where to begin, but I also don't know what to say when I do. I suppose the first step is to inform everyone that I did manage to get a really competent lawyer. Her company, in general, is ranked #1 in my region for defending males in divorce matters. Instead of delegating my matter to another member of the legal team, she took it on herself. Everyone at the business has been kind and helpful. I can see they don't only want their retainer and payout. Nadia, my lawyer, has done all she can to assist me maintain my sanity and well-being. We went through the customary papers I needed to complete out after agreeing to accept my case. I gave the property and all bank account information, as well as rough estimations of Mari and my income. She inquired whether I'd had an STD panel after I told her about the crash and what I saw immediately before it occurred. I explained that I had, and that everything had been cleared up. She then inquired as to whether I had photographed or videotaped the cheating. I explained that I hadn't been thinking logically enough at the time to do so. She called a private investigator who works for her company and scheduled a meeting with him the following day. I am living in a fault condition. So, even though I felt Mari was unfaithful, I needed solid proof for the divorce to go my way. We assigned one of her employees to act as a liaison between me and Mari's father in terms of communication and drop-offs. I had her assistant advise my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law that my ex may have the kids that weekend and the following week. Nadia then inquired as to whether I had scheduled counseling for myself and my children. I stated that I had my first therapy session the following week. But, since the youngsters hadn't been informed anything yet, I was delaying. She informed me that if I thought they needed professional help, I should let her know since she had numerous therapists she could suggest. She conveyed what seemed to be honest sympathies while I was going through all I had and would have to go through. I'm not a big fan of attorneys, but I believe I may have discovered one with a soul. She provided me a list of items to gather and complete before our next meeting. Many of the directions were similar to the advice given by people on this site. So when she instructed me to go to the pharmacy and acquire 2 DNA tests, I didn't think much of it. I was aware that that was usual procedure. I performed the cheek swabs for myself and the kids when I arrived home that night with the kids. After dropping the kids off at school the following morning, I wrapped everything up and shipped the kits. Friday came 2 days later, and the go-between sent the kids off with their grandpa for the weekend that morning. I went to work and was about to return after lunch when I received an email notice from my personal account. I could see it was 2 emails from the lab, so I waited until I could get to my computer to read them. I opened the first email and clicked a link at my desk. According to the findings, my son Michael is really my son. I opened the second email and followed the link. I read what it had to say. I reread what it stated. I couldn't really say anything, so I simply shook my head. I had to leave the workplace before I fell. But I could take screenshots of both results and email them to myself as JPGs. I ran to my car and sobbed when I realized my daughter Carrie wasn't my daughter. Losing an arm would not be as painful as losing a daughter. My soul felt stolen from me. I'm at a loss for words. Who should I contact? I just sat there weeping, hoping to wake up. From my email, I copied the 2 files to my lawyer. Nadia called me in 20 seconds, asking where I was. Work, I said. She told me to stay still and a representative from the company will be there shortly. I hung up and opened the door. I began dry heaving and vomiting uncontrollably. When I finished vomiting and was bewildered, a paralegal rushed to my aid. I was ushered into Nadia's office as soon as she finished with a customer. She told me right away that the testing findings were not always accurate. In her words, she understood my discontent. But she requested we test Carrie and me again at a local lab to be sure. I couldn't believe it. Even after Mari was captured, I thought the kids' DNA tests were a formality. I never thought my wife would betray me. But, if she could father another man's child, why did I marry her? I couldn't face Mari. I had no proof. But I couldn't see us having that chat if the data confirmed our assumptions. A woman in the firm's office had a blood pressure cup and checked my. It was high, and I was having a panic attack. I was both numb and shocked. I wondered what might happen next. I couldn't believe that my little kid wasn't mine. Glad they were living with their mum at the time. I started to wonder whether the tests were wrong and Carrie and Michael were not my children. 2 days to find out the truth was too long. So the middleman arranged for Carrie to be picked up the next day and transported to Mari's parents. We did the test in a clean room with qualified medical staff. No misunderstanding. Not me, Carrie's dad. It took a day to get the findings, and she was back with her mother by then. Sadly, Carrie wasn't there to see my second round of sobs. My lawyer called me after receiving the results. You should seek out family and not face problems alone. I got in my car and drove to my father's home, crying. It was clear something was awry when I arrived and saw my mom. Carrie is not my daughter, I finally said. What? Mom asked, but I couldn't repeat anything. After about 30 seconds of silence, save for my furious weeping, she leapt up and got her phone. She called my dad. She told him to rush home, but to be careful, since she had bad news. I could see my father yearning for a hint of what was to come. She merely asked him to be careful and come home soon. We all grieved for hours when he arrived in 20 minutes. I'd comfort him. He'd console my mom. They'd soothe me. We were all crying. They naturally asked about Michael, and I said he was mine. Each of them felt guilty for being relieved at losing just one grandchild. They asked what I wanted to achieve. I said I had no idea. I knew Carrie would never be without anything she needed or wanted. I didn't consider future child support requirements. She would be taken care of. Much worse than my own feelings was Carrie's, who was entirely innocent. Is it true I sought her custody? Could I ever get custody of Carrie? I began to wonder whether Mari was aware or suspicious. I wanted answers right now. I met with Nadia after work on Monday, and she informed me that she had met with the private investigator hired to monitor Mari. She hadn't gone out of the home to cheat because of the crash. So I wasn't shocked when he said he didn't have any current proof. Nadia, on the other hand, asked me to fetch Mari's old smartphone from a drawer at home. He was able to log in and use practically every app on her shattered phone. He discovered nudes emailed and received by several men. Tons of texts and with enough admissions of guilt to persuade any court. I was asked whether I wanted to look at any of the photographs or read any of the writing. I said no. Nadia and I, on the other hand, needed to arrange how I was going to face Mari about Carrie. If Mari could be persuaded, she believed it would be preferable to do it at her office. In front of me, she dialed Mari's mother's phone number. Mari's voice was heard for the first time since I left the hospital. Nadia cut to the chase and told her she needed to meet with me to clarify a few things. My ex said that she had been waiting and wanted to chat for a long time. She was asked whether she wanted her lawyer to be notified. Mari said that she did not have one, but that she would be willing to come the following afternoon to speak about it. It was all I could do to get through the following day at work without sobbing like a crazy while pretending to get things done. I was scarcely able to finish my lunch, but I left at 3 o'clock and proceeded to the company, feeling nauseated. I purposefully arrived first. I wanted her to be forced to enter, sit on the other side of the room from the entrance, and be unable to approach me. When she walked in, I was browsing through images of our beautiful family that never existed. She required help walking and was still in 2 casts from the accident. I didn't have to be concerned about her attempting to embrace me. I assumed she was exaggerating for pity, but we did have a serious accident. I ultimately simply wanted her to sit down so I could ask her to explain herself. Water was served after everyone was seated, and the discussion started. My lawyer began by asking Mari whether she minded if we recorded the meeting. She wasn't bothered by it. My soon-to-be ex-wife began to apologize as soon as we started filming. I abruptly stopped her and asked her directly how many guys she had cheated on me with and when it began. The PI had verified enough ups for me to know that the person I found her with wasn't the first by a long shot. Of course, she had no idea what we knew. And, I suppose, in order to minimize the gravity of the episode before to the crash, her goal was to just acknowledge to what she knew we knew. I asked her again, with a rough estimate, how many guys she had slept with since the birth of our kid. Giving her a clear time range appeared to give her a minute's pause, but she continued to pretend to be dumb. At that moment, she still believed it was all a game, and I was losing my calm. Nadia softly pulled me back away from the table with her hand on my shoulder. She glanced at Mari and inquired as to whether I was a decent parent. She immediately gave me a wonderful review, stating she couldn't have asked for a finer father to raise her children. When she mentioned her children, I wanted to get up and overturn the table. Nadia then inquired whether the other father of her kid would be a nice parent as well. My counsel slipped Carrie's paternity findings across the table as Mari inquired about the other father she was referring about. As much as I despise how my life has changed after uncovering her infidelity, I wanted to be there to see her response in person. She was definitely taken aback when she discovered Carrie wasn't hers. And she attempted to attack me with the entire "you're her father who raised her" thing, which I had to shut down. I inquired about Carrie's father. She glanced down with a look of guilt on her face, and I assumed she was protecting someone. Mari watched me cry for the first time when she stated she didn't know for sure who Carrie's father is. I simply couldn't stand it any longer and gave up. Mari was weeping, but she was urged to attempt to explain. She told me about the postpartum depression she had after Michael was born. I tried to be as empathetic as possible at the moment. I can confidently state that I spent every available minute caring for my kid in order for her to have time to herself. There were days when she couldn't even get out of bed because she was so sad, and I was responsible for all of us. But I had a great time doing it. I enjoyed doing it for my family. I recalled. I had really been dumb enough to believe that getting it through had strengthened our connection. Nope. She didn't blame Rebecca for it. But I was pleased, if not thankful, when she initially convinced Mari to join her on a few girls' evenings out. They'd been great friends for years, but they hadn't seen each other much throughout the pregnancy. Mari said that the second time they went out, she got incredibly intoxicated and let some man feel her up as she gave him the head. She said she felt horrible about it for months. But she started to hate not being able to be young and free to be with anyone she wanted. She informed us that she began up with males on the evenings she went out with Rebecca. Until the night of our accident, she'd never not returned home or returned home late. She stated she didn't want to fall in love with any of the males. She said that she always used protection and that she never slept with the same man more than 3 times. She said that all she wanted was. I was taken aback. Finding out your wife is a nasty lying harlot usually does the trick. It was like discovering your life is a reality show you didn't ask to be a part of. I wanted to shout at her, but I was too preoccupied with calculating how many guys she had probably cheated on me with over the years. Nadia questioned whether she knew who Carrie's father was, and she said she had always thought she was my lawyer pointed out that something had certainly occurred and speculated that maybe a condom had broken. When my wife admitted that it had happened a few times with a few men, I lost it. I inquired as to who the heck she was. Because I didn't know who was saying such heinous things to me. It seemed as though she was ordering me to pass the salt. I asked her when she began to dislike me and why. I inquired as to what I had ever done to merit being treated in this manner. What could she possibly have done to her daughter? I was enraged. She accepted it knowing it was all true. Divorce is a foregone conclusion after what she just told me and what I'd conveyed about how I feel about her. What was once a marriage has turned into burnt ground. The only thing left was to count the casualties. I've lost 2 people in my life, my wife and my daughter. A woman has lost 3 husbands. A daughter lost her father, and a brother's sister became a half-sister. Then there are grandparents and in-laws to consider. Mari effectively wrecked 2 whole families. Her parents will be furious at what she did. And I promise by everything that is holy that I will let them view all of the evidence that the pie uncovers. She admits to meeting guys on dating apps with Rebecca and utilizing girl time as a time. She stated she had no intention of hurting me. She said she had no clue Carrie wasn't hers. I trust her since I, too, had no notion. However, DNA does not lie. I inquired as to why she did not just divorce me. She said unequivocally that she did not want to lose the security. I handed it to her. She sobbed. Everything was uttered through tears. But I know my face was just one of disdain. I despise the guy sitting across from me. I feel cheated, humiliated, and emasculated. I'm feeling defeated. I'm very sure one of the reasons she came to speak with me without a lawyer was because I own everything. Outside of a little 401k, she doesn't have much to lose. And my riches came from receiving my grandfather's fortune when I was 14 years old. My biological mother is not the lady I call mom. My mother died when I was 2 years old from a rare, rapidly developing cancer. When I was 4 years old, my father remarried the lady I call mom. I'd known my whole life that she wasn't my real mother, and that I wasn't her biological son. I subsequently discovered she couldn't have children, and parenting me helped her understand that. When my biological mother's father died, everything was left to her passed to me as her successor, but I couldn't touch anything until I was 21 years old. I worked hard in class and studied hard. But I'm not required to work. In terms of money, she knows I'll wash the floor with her in the divorce, and she won't receive even half of what she's asking for. She has a job, she can't work right now due to her ailments, but she has a job. Part of me wants to punish her, while another part of me just wants to be done with her. Mari was plainly on painkillers, which may have contributed to her gruff demeanor. The pain of her words was amplified by my fantasy. I asked whether she felt sorry. She said she had. I pondered how we discover Carrie's father. I already know who her father is. Said my STBXW. BS. I wasn't in the mood for a philosophical discussion about parenting. Carrie deserves to know who her father is and his family for health reasons. The Pies evidence didn't go back far enough. I asked her if she knew where any of these individuals were or had their phone numbers. To lose their phone numbers meant never seeing them again. How could I miss that? In case he had a baby or she got an STD, I encouraged her to save his number. I'd want my name erased from Carrie's birth record. Her DNA proves she is not my child. As previously said, I will continue to help her financially long after she turns 18. Nothing will be missing in her. Concerning my child and custody, I'm speechless. Prior to the paternity test, I considered a 90/10 arrangement, in which I would grant my ex-wife monthly weekend and holiday custody. Even if I could get custody of Carrie, I don't want to. Despite the fact that he is her half-brother, I cannot remove Michael from her. I don't want them hurt. That's why I can't let Carrie see me weep over the test results. I don't know how much her treatment will cost, but I must pay for it. Nobody knows whether her biological father can afford it. And my own therapy will pay for a therapist's new beach house. After the conference, I just wanted it to be done. Except for me, that was the greatest response. Both families may dispute paternity. It's possible my ex-girlfriend cheated my granddad. And the kids would be spared a broken marriage or a failed relationship. But when I arrived home, I said, F that. Nadia is preparing divorce papers and legal documents to have me proclaimed not to be Carrie's father. Things will take substantially longer as a result of this. But I don't want any legal reasons to compel me to engage with, pay for, or deal with children who aren't mine. The legal team is looking at methods to figure out who Carrie's father is. When the results of an ancestry search are returned, many of the sites identify prospective relatives. That is our first course of action for the time being. Even if the findings do not link to a specific person, they might be referring to a sibling, cousin, or another relative. Whoever the man is, he may not be ready to welcome a kid he is unaware of. It may create some stress in his life. But I doubt it will be anything close as horrible as losing my kid for good because she never existed. Everything is just so messed up right now. Nothing is secure. At this point, chaos is a daily strain. The youngsters return to the home on Sunday afternoon. I've never wanted to be unable to see them. But I know that many unavoidable events will occur for which I will be unprepared. When she sees me, she immediately wants to hug her father. I'm not even sure how I'm going to respond. Hug her and weep like a baby, knowing she has never really been mine. Tell her I'm not the right guy for her. I can't bring myself to be cruel to her. My heart, on the other hand, is shattered. There's no one to take it out on, not even Mari. Because nothing I could do short of murder could compensate for the treachery she has inflicted on me. She used me and spat me out, so that scale would never be balanced. For her promiscuous lying ways, she deserves to suffer in hell. Everything I used to love has been shattered, even myself. I'm going to win the divorce. Nadia and her associates will create the most lopsided asset distribution in the history of divorce. Mari, on the other hand, has diminished or destroyed the worth of so much for me that it seems like she's already won. To heck with her once again. I'm left with a son that she intends to use against me and control. Some individuals are really heinous and ought to be like animals. I made the mistake of having a kid with one. I recently realized I'm not the only one that makes bad decisions.